Have you seen any starter homes for sale lately? Neither have I. Hello, and welcome to the Who Killed the Starter Home podcast. My name is Marina Rubina. I'm an architect and developer in New Jersey, working to bring starter homes back from the brink of extinction. On this podcast, we usually focus on housing policy, but we're taking some time to host special conversations with the candidates running for New Jersey's 12th Congressional District. While our listeners outside of New Jersey may not care about this specific election, they may be fascinated to hear that we have 17 courageous people putting themselves in the spotlight and offering their vision and ideas for the future of their country. Housing issues are inevitably coming up, so we aren't straying too far off topic. Washington is a shark tank, says Dr. Cohen, a physician and the sitting mayor of East Brunswick. In this episode, we discuss how taking care of patients and delivering babies as a gynecologist, protecting education as a school board member, negotiating economic development and housing as a mayor, makes him uniquely qualified to make a difference in Congress. In all his pursuits, he's been willing to study, learn, and work to fix problems. Can this executive mindset be useful in Washington? Please note that the views expressed by the candidate are his own and do not necessarily reflect the opinion of this podcast. Given the nature of these long-form interviews, we cannot independently fact-check every claim made during this conversation. We encourage listeners to research the candidates and issues as we approach the primary. We would like to hear what you think about this conversation, or if you have any ideas for how to bring the starter homes back from the brink of extinction, send us a note at starterhomepodcast@gmail.com. Brad, I really appreciate your taking the time from your busy schedule as
Thank
a
you.
public official and a candidate. And also thank you for joining this incredibly competitive race where we have, if I understand correctly, 17 candidates running for one seat.
Yeah, 17. It's exhausting, but it is but that's a democracy, so that's a good thing that many people want to do and provide a service to their fellow residents. I think that's a good sign.
Exactly. And the hope for this conversation today is when there's 17 candidates in a forum, everybody gets, a 2-minute little time to say something. And it's really hard for somebody to get to know the candidate closer. So the hope today is for people to get to know you a little bit better and hear a little bit about your background and what you stand for. So if that's okay, maybe start telling people a little bit about yourself and to get us started.
Okay, well, to be blunt, if this was about 15, 16 years ago, I can promise you that there was never a thought in my mind that we would be having this conversation and that I would be in a race like this for congressional seat. I was a very happy, go lucky gynecologist, taking care of my patients, spending time in the OR, concentrating on patient care, and really didn't spend an awful lot of time worrying outside of that world because that is so all encompassing of itself. And what actually got me really most motivated into any type of public service was the Christie cuts to education that took place when he became the governor and we were dealing with a recession. And I knew that I had kids that had just graduated from a top-notch school system. That is the primary reason why people move to East Brunswick, where I'm mayor. And I didn't want anything to affect the education of the kids that followed me. I want, you always want for them to have the same opportunities or more than you had. And I know what happens when people have to hit that red pen and start making cuts. And invariably in education, it often ends up doing in some programs and teachers and things that primarily benefit our children. And I didn't want that to happen. And instead of running to board meetings and yelling and screaming, I felt that, I'm a bright guy. I'm interested in this. I think I could be part of the solution instead of being amongst the people that are critics. So I ran for a school board position. I had absolutely no idea how to do that. I'd never run in a race before. Didn't know you have to have a tagline at the bottom of a campaign sign until someone told me that. Didn't know you can't put a sign up by near the school property. I didn't know any of that. But the point was is that I was motivated and interested in making sure that I could give back. I didn't even know how to look up results when it was done. Is before all of the computer stuff and the mail-in ballots and stuff that we have now, where everything's all electronic. And my wife wakes me up and says, "Brad, I'm looking at the results online. I think you won this thing." So I really didn't know, but fast forward, I did 5, 6, almost 7 years on the school board. We did a very good job of making sure that we retained programs. In fact, our reputation improved during the years that I was on the school board. I became the school board president, which in a town like ours, which really education is very important, that puts you in a place where a lot of people know who you are. Not that I was doing it for that purpose, but it turned out that by the time I really started concentrating outside of the school board on the town itself. That recession that had affected the schools and the school budgets was also causing a more long-term effect on the most important commercial corridor in our district, which in our township, which is Route 18. And a lot of the businesses had succumbed to the idea of online shopping. So a lot of the retail left and a lot of the buildings were left to disrepair. And that put a strain on the municipal taxes, because if you're not collecting it from your ratables, then you got to charge residents. We're an 80% residential town. And so, like I normally do, I do my research. I do my, I'm not going to go out there and talk unless I know what I'm talking about. I read everything I possibly could about redevelopment, real estate law, land use law, and came up with a plan for how we're going to turn around the Route 18 corridor. I made my case to the Democratic committee in East Brunswick when they were looking for someone to select for mayor. I gave them a 15 to 20 page paper with bibliography so that if they asked me any questions, I could absolutely back up everything that I wrote. And I think I blew them away. They're like, this dude's really serious. He's got a plan. And so they went ahead and put their faith in me to run for mayor, and I won. And that has been another entry into a different form of public service, and have to keep to your promise. The Route 18 corridor is now turned around. It's actually something that people around the state are talking about, coming back to me saying, wow, I just drove by here and I can't believe how quickly this thing has changed. And it's all a matter of doing your homework, making sure you find the right people to bring in, make it a team. I can't do it myself, but you got to bring people in with you to see a vision that maybe it's so clear to you, but it's not necessarily so clear to everybody else. So you have to work really hard at getting out to all different parts of the community. The long and the short of it is that because of that work, and that work is continuing, municipal taxes, not the school, not the county, but municipal taxes in East Brunswick since I took office has never gone above 1% per year. So we have been able to use that to bring the tax dollars in that helps keep the taxes stable. And a nice, sort of conclusion to all of that, even though the work is still being done, is that at the very beginning, I had two owners of property on Route 18 come up to me, and they wanted to know what the plan was. They had known that I was going out and doing town halls. I was talking to different groups. I was going into churches and synagogues and explaining as much as you can, right? You want the community involved in this and feeling like they have a part. And also recognizing that maybe sometimes somebody comes up with a suggestion that, despite all of your experts, might be a really good idea. So those are great ways of incorporating things in that you might not have thought of. But they came in to meet with me. They wanted to talk to me about what my plan was for Route 18. So I took a big, basically a large paper that had everything sort of put out on a graphic form. And I said, well, we're going to do 2 or 3 projects over here. And then we're going to do this project over here. And once that starts to get going, now we're going to move to the south end of the highway where the Brunswick Square Mall is. And then we're going to bookend the highway. And once we start doing that, then it's going to cause market pressure for all the businesses in between to start to upgrade. And I won't have to offer them anything because the market controls that. And I think they left spinning, but they didn't say anything. They said, thank you, Mayor, and they left. About a year ago, they came back into my office and sat down with me, and they said, I have to tell you, couple of years ago when we came into your office and we had that conversation, my brother and I walked out of that room thinking there is no goddamn way this doctor who knows nothing about land use, knows nothing about real estate, nothing about redevelopment and the quicksand that you get stuck in for any one project is ever going to get 5, 6 projects that he's talking about. If he gets one in a career, that's probably a lot. And they said, we have to come in because we started to look at the highway and everything you told us you were going to do is all starting to pop out of the ground. And we just wanted to come in to tell you that we completely underestimated you. And it was a compliment because it really is doable, but you have to be diligent. You have to, again, work as a team, get the right people in, make sure that you hold people to deadlines. The first time I did that, I think somebody was about to croak because they said, "Well, you really serious about that?" Yeah, that's why it's called a deadline. And from my operations courses in business school, which is something I did after medical school. Yeah, you look at these massive projects as just an operations experiment and you try to maximize and minimize each one of those steps so that you get a project done at a reasonably fast pace. But everything's broken down into smaller operations and you have to think of it that way and hold people to it. And I do, but it's yielded us significant results enough that most of the state and developers community is talking about what's going on here, and I'm proud of that.
Fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing. And maybe a little diversion from the campaign, but can you tell us, so how did you solve that problem? Because this is a countrywide problem of balancing businesses that are competing with online shopping as opposed to real life stores that one could walk into. What was your solution? What did you come up with, and
Hmm.
what is coming out? Because this podcast is, of course, this is a campaign version, but most of the people who listen to this are interested in housing, economic development. So we're all dying to find out.
So I think a lot of it is one, recognizing the world's changed, right? The retail industry has changed. People buy online. I also don't buy the fact that that's only young people because when I run campaigns, when I've knocked door to door and we get our little van which tells you who's at the house and what age it is, there is absolutely no difference in the age group and the number of boxes on somebody's front porch. So obviously, people who are older are shopping online and they are going into chain restaurants, even though they tell you that they don't go there. But I was in Panera the other day. I was the youngest person in there and they were all ordering on kiosks. So don't tell me they don't know how to use all this stuff because they do. But the world has significantly changed. There's some retail that's going to stay, but most of what we've had to do is change a primarily retail corridor into one that has a significantly higher level of entertainment and services. That's really what seems to, you can't do that you can't zoom that, right? You can't do that from home. So whether it's medical services or services in dog, watching the dog, or and all the entertainment stuff. Whether it's we're building, literally going to open up in another week, a 2-sheet ice rink here in East Brunswick, and that's something that can be used beyond just ice. There's going to be room for us to have recreation space there. Can be used for some of our camps during the summer when it's brutally hot or kids don't want to be outside because it's raining. There's parties that you could put there, indoor programming, besides obviously the ice. And there's not a lot of ice time in the States. So I have every expectation it will be busy. And I want to provide something for the kids in town that they don't need to leave town all the time to do. But that's really what the corridor's turning into. And we married what we needed to do for buildings that had fallen into disrepair with the affordable housing obligation that every single town in the state has to deal with. And I know we were going to talk a little bit about that, but affordable housing is an issue, whether it's affordable housing in terms of those that actually qualify based on their incomes, or housing that's affordable, which is for people who are looking to buy something but they don't qualify for affordable housing. That is a major issue here in the state. But every town has the obligation. Anybody trying to fight it in court's going to lose. So instead of wasting tax dollars on lawsuits that we have absolutely no chance of winning, it's all being done by the court system. It's a constitutional requirement. So the odds that any town's going to go to court when it's the courts that are telling us to do this is a fool's idea. So we took that obligation and we worked with the developers in ways that helped renovate buildings that had fallen into disrepair and turn them around into something that accommodates our affordable housing obligation, provides housing that's affordable to those that want to live here, and combines it with a sort of a live work experience type of area where it could include retail. And every one of our retail spaces in the buildings we've opened so far has fully rented out. So again, if you build it the right way, if you can encourage the developers that by allowing them to have folks that are living within a walkable distance of some of this retail, it can work. And most of what you see going in are restaurants, tutoring facilities, nail salons, dentists, bagel shops, coffee shops. These are things that people need to get out of their house to do, but they're filling. What seems to drive it in our neck of the woods, our commercial corridor, is that all of the retailers are very, very specific in what they want today because they know that they need to make sure that they're successful. They need to be in the right location with the right volume. So most of them want to be facing so that you could see them from the highway. Right? The days of the malls, indoor malls, is falling apart. That's why you see a lot of the malls closing, other than very specific areas like Short Hills, and we're not Short Hills. These are stores and retailers that all want to be seen from the highway. We have Route 18 that sees about 100,000 cars a day. They want to be seen from the highway. So a lot of the indoor malls, the indoor facing type of strip malls have to be redone in a way that people could see them. They also want to have people within walking distance. So while everybody wants to do away with the overcrowding and everyone's panicked about, you got to build them. So I'm going to build the affordable housing and the housing in the places that might enhance the retail that everybody tells me they want back here in East Brunswick. So, yes, despite all your whining and your complaining, we will incorporate with our retail residential. And the reality is that if you look at the income requirements on the full price units, not the affordables, that the developers are asking for, they want 3 times the yearly rent. So if you're paying $2,500 to $3,000 a month times 3 years, those people that are in those apartments better be making over $100,000 a year or they're not getting an apartment. And every one of those retailers know that. So the things that they're looking for, again, forward facing, you could be seen. They want to be on the outside. They'd like to see a volume of cars on the highway. Everybody in my town doesn't want to see anybody on Route 18 because they're sick of traffic. That is exactly the opposite of what the retailers want. Right? They want the volume and they all want to have residential units that are within a walking distance. So they have clients that they know have a income base that could support the companies that we keep telling everybody we want here, whether it's the restaurants or the service industries or any one of them. That's what they're looking for. So I could marry our affordable housing obligation with a way of reinventing properties that have fallen into disrepair. And I think most people get that. They would far rather see a township invest in renovating properties that's fallen into disrepair than to knock another vacant piece of property down, knock all the trees down, and park a ugly apartment complex there, which is what you're seeing being done throughout the entire state. That's boring. In another couple of years, it's going to look old. Everyone's going to look the same. We were willing to work with the redevelopment laws that exist here on the books to allow areas to be designated. In doing so, you can then offer them tax incentives to actually turn these properties around. It's expensive. Often they have to pick up property, which is not cheap. The labor is not cheap. Now with the damn tariffs, the equipment and the supplies are not cheap. And these projects take a while just to go through the whole legal system that's our land use laws require. So all of these are very expensive, and a lot of the developers need some kind of incentive. I go to development meetings all the time. They're not going to do a major project like that unless the town's willing to offer some kind of tax break. So that's exactly how we've done them. And my feeling on that is that the first ones coming in when the highway was really desolate get the best deal. As we continue to move along the highway and start to see better retail and higher income level people moving into the corridor, I don't think I should have to offer the next guy down the line the same deal that the first guy got, because the first guy took all the chances. The second, the third, the fourth, they're benefiting from the chances that somebody else took. And frankly, at some point, you don't need to offer it at all, because the people that are left are going to have two choices. Either the better retail that they have in their strip malls or their properties are going to go to the nicer places, or they're going to have to invest in their own property if they want to keep their tenants. And I'm not going to have to offer them a thing. The market controls that. So you got to plan this out like you're playing a three-tiered game of chess. You don't do the first step unless you've already thought 10 steps down the line. And that's often very hard for a public to see what's in my head. Right? It's almost like watching HDTV when somebody walks into this ugly house that's been in disrepair for years and looks horrible, and someone says, "Oh yes, move that wall, put that over here. That's a weight bearing spot." Blah, blah, blah. Next thing you know, in their head, they've got the whole thing renovated. But to the average person who doesn't really think like that, someone has to do it before they could see it, or they have to be really far along for someone to say, "Oh, that's what she was talking about." That's what a mayor and needs to be. And I'm just looking to do what I've done here for a larger congressional district where we have an incredible amount of assets here that can be utilized to spur the economy of the region in which we live, and provide the housing for people that both want to live here but want to live here and be able to afford to live. In Jersey's very expensive, and we have to figure out ways of doing that. And there's a lot of things we could be doing.
Yeah, well, you're nicely transitioning to my questions. So perfect. So I was going to ask that, if I understand correctly, what type of government is your town? Are you sort of the
So
strong
yeah,
mayor?
we're a strong mayor. So for most people that don't know what that means, it's pretty much that mirrors what you see on the state and the federal level, where there's three separate branches. Mayor is elected and is by the public, and you are the chief executive. And my council is the legislative branch. So it's very similar to what most people are used to in the levels of government that they're most familiar with. And obviously, there's other forms of government, councils and boroughs and strong mayors and weak mayors and all of that. But ours is a strong mayor.
Right. So, do you think it would be weird for you from going to the being the executive and to kind of switching to the legislative part where you wouldn't be executing, you would be sort of more on making laws, and this is long-term difficult negotiating? Or do you think that we have a lot to gain from somebody with executive experience
Well, I'm glad
jumping
you
to,
asked that question, because I personally think that it would be a
maybe you
tremendous
should be running for
advantage
president?
if we could eliminate the one we have there right now and put somebody in that can actually think clearly and make decisions that restores faith in democracy. I think that would be a great idea. But that's a that's a big step. Right now, I think that one of the main advantages to having somebody in the legislatures that has true executive experience is that I understand how to implement some of the laws that people put on the books. And that's a huge advantage, because a lot of times we see some really terrific laws that our legislators have put on the books, and they were long overdue and can't wait to implement them. Sometimes they put the most god awful things on the books that might sound good on paper, but then when you actually need to implement it, it doesn't really work, or it's unfunded mandates, or it's unimplementable. I don't even know if that's a word. It just is so difficult to make that happen. And I think as a executive charged with carrying out a lot of those things, I would be keenly aware of that when it comes to legislating and putting things on the books so that they're actually things that really make a difference in people's lives and they could be implemented in a way that's easy and seamless.
Well, I would love to see some laws that are easy to implement and deliver the results. So, what areas are kind of the most important for you? If you get there day one, here we are, what would be your top priorities?
Well, there's a bunch of things. And so one that I think is foremost is a return to democracy. I think we've seen a president that has really taken the Congress and a Congress that has been willing to cede to the president powers that don't belong in the executive branch. I'm a pretty good student of history. I even have third graders that come up to the township to learn about government when they're on that section. Even they know that there are three co equal branches of government. They know what that means. Our Congress does not. And unfortunately, they have ceded responsibilities that belong in the legislative branch, and that needs to come back there, whether it's the power of the purse, decisions about war, decisions about how the laws are going to be put on the books. It's the executive branch that implements it, but it's the legislative branch that makes it, and they have control of the purse. And we've given that away. And that is sad because we're seeing that in some of the bills that came through that are going to profoundly affect education, science. Obviously, I'm a science guy. I'm a firm believer in the power of science research, in how we treat people, whether they are immigrants, which this country is founded on. Our greatest achievements have come from immigrants, voting rights, women's rights. I'm a gynecologist. My entire life has been devoted to the well-being and care of women. It's unfathomable to me that as I get to this point in my career, that women now have less rights than when I started. And I don't know how we stand by and let that happen. So trampling on democracy, three co-equal branches of government, especially as we're in our 250th year of a democracy, we need to take that back. So that would be item number one. Item number two is affordability. And I think that people use that word and often it's now almost becoming meaningless because you don't define what you mean by it. And it's almost being taken by every single group to try to win an election. So in 24, Trump wins on the affordability issue. And then in 25, Mamdani wins on an issue of affordability. And they couldn't be more apart in their political opinions. But the bottom line is that no one's really doing anything. In fact, it's actually getting worse. So dealing with the fact that our healthcare costs are out of control, our housing costs are out of control, our insurance costs are out of control, our energy costs are out of control, childcare costs are out of control, and people are just finding it much more difficult to get along. And the part that really angers me about that, besides the utter unfairness of it, and no one really doing anything, is that after the Epstein files was released, it became apparent what we knew all along, which is that despite the sex scandals that's gone on forever, there's clearly two groups of people in this country, with all of us who try to follow the laws and find it more difficult to get by, and then there's a total other group to which laws don't apply to them. All of the economic factors don't affect them. They are so stratospherically away from the rest of us. And this administration has allowed them to get richer and richer. They've become Bitcoin billionaires. We can't even track how much money they have. It is unconscionable. We have got a largest wealth gap since we've started collecting statistics back when they broke up the trusts under Teddy Roosevelt. It's not fair. Creating fairness in the system allows the ability to free up some of the funds that could be used to solve some of these major issues. And it doesn't make us a socialist country. So I'm a little sick of people saying that we're creating socialism when you do that. No, you're not. Medicare is a social welfare system, and I don't see too many people voluntarily giving up their Medicare because they feel it's a social safety net. So please. And it's the same thing with the Social Security. It's a social safety net, and there's nobody voluntarily giving that up. So I think the reality is that we could create fairness, fund some of these things, make people's lives more affordable. When their lives are more affordable, they contribute back to the economy. It has always shown that that happens, and we in Congress need to be doing that. So that's the second. I think a corollary to it as a physician is healthcare. I think it's terrible that I have to sit and ask my patients all the time, are you sure you're going to be able to afford this medicine I'm about to give you? Or maybe because your insurance isn't going to cover this procedure, maybe we'll try doing something less invasive or put you on some medicine. Isn't going to work as well as getting your surgery. But these are conversations we shouldn't be having here. I've seen people who have had cancers and then insurance companies later retroactively deny the coverage they thought they were entitled to and be stuck with bills that put them into bankruptcy. This is not the America that we have, where everybody has equal opportunity. I think we need some kind of universal healthcare system. Which way we go about doing it is a matter of conversation, but we need to all agree that that's the direction that we need to go in. And as a physician, I would champion that. And I think the last thing for especially our congressional district is that if you look at the Einstein Alley, which is basically the Brunswicks all the way down to Princeton, Trenton, that whole Route 1 corridor, and then the 287, 206 corridor, arguably we would be considered the Silicon Valley of the life science industries, whether it's big pharma, little pharma, startups, cell and gene research, photonics, personal care products, biotechnology. I can go on and on, but they dot the landscape. All of those industries are feeding the economy of the region in which we live, particularly the 12th congressional district. We have a president that has now attacked science, research, education, and with that also is attacking immigration and H-1B visas for people who come in with those talents to provide the workforce for those industries, and we're not creating the type of educational opportunities for people to fill those. Those industries over time, if we don't invest in them and continue to support them, will just pick up and go somewhere else. And when that happens, then we lose a major economic stimulator of our region. I can't let that happen. And so these are the issues that would play most on my mind if I were lucky enough to be in DC.
Great. Well, they're all very logical, very rooted in solving real problems. How do you see actually working in Congress to get anything done? Because, for example, I listened to an interview with Bonnie Watson Coleman, who was sort of saying that she's retiring and announcing this is going to be her last term.
Mhm.
And one of the reasons that she gave was that it's impossible to get anything done in Congress. How do we have somebody with great ideas coming in and somehow
Get
going
stuff
from
done.
great ideas to like, how do we get it done?
Well, I've been told that before, right? I was told that when I went to medical school, it's going to be really hard. Okay, I figured that out. I was told that you can't go to business school as a medical provider because how are you going to be able to fit all that in? I got it done. I was still practicing, still delivering babies, and reading my biostatistics and economics books and was able to get it done. They told me you're not going to be able to turn the school system around. I was able to do that. They told me that I wasn't going to be able to do any of the development work, like I told you from the beginning, that they never expected, but they've always underestimated me. And I think that there's a power in individuals that are relentless in wanting to get work done. It's like dealing with your children. You have to pick your battles. There's going to be some things that you just need to work with people on the other side and move the ball forward. It might not be 100% of what you want, but moving it forward is still better than just yelling from the rafters at each other and accomplishing absolutely nothing. So pick your areas, but the ones that you hold most dear, that are the most critical, those are the areas you don't give up on. How we're treating our immigrants, how we're treating the healthcare system where it is so unequal in the ability to have access. These are foundational issues for me. A lot of the other ones are let's sit down at the table and have a conversation. And I think, unfortunately, the media has given megaphones to people that sit at the extremes of each party, and all they want to do is yell at one another. So one gets into power, and they spend more of their time trying to make the other side look bad. And then it reverses, and they do the same thing the other way around. I'm not interested in that. That's performative politics. I have zero interest in doing that. I want to solve problems, laser focused on that. And I think that that's what matters when people are out to make a judge among 17 people that are out there. Who has the resume to actually be able to do the things he or she says they want to do? And look, it's great that you have a lot of good ideas. Have you ever accomplished any of them? I sat and worked in the department of whatever. I ran for office but I didn't win, or I've advocated. You haven't done anything. I'm sorry, when I hire somebody for a job, I'd like to see their resume, and I sure as hell hope something's on there. And I think that for me, it's about the resume. You have somebody who's been able to flourish in the healthcare field and grow, somebody who took that to both a board of education and a township and made significant positive change in government, which is often like quicksand. You got to make things happen. So I'm going to go with the person who knows how to make things happen, even when it seems like the inertia to do nothing is too great.
I don't know if you have any specific examples, but I'm so fascinated to learn about your school board experience, especially because, in my understanding, school boards is where it gets really emotional because it's not only people's property values that are involved,
Their
but
kids.
it's their kids. This is where it really gets really upsetting. So I'm fascinated to how do you treat people who come to the school board or work with others on the school board and transfer that to kind of a, you know, dysfunctional situation we got in Congress. Any specific examples you could think
Well,
of?
I think that the first thing is I know people use the word transparent. To me, it's just having conversations with people and bringing them in and making them feel like you're really listening to them. Sometimes they don't even have to agree. You don't have to agree with them. Sometimes you're going to explain to them why they're dead wrong in what they're saying. But the first step is to reach out to folks who have issues, and instead of waiting for them to get their 5 minutes with someone with a timer at a board of ed meeting and then some board secretary say your time is up, you need to meet with them at their level, in their homes, in their groups, bring them to do a coffee, town halls, talk to people. It's not that hard, and you have no idea how much just allowing people to vent matters. Sometimes it's a matter of taking a complicated topic and explaining why you really can't do what they're asking for or it's impractical. Explaining how school funding works. It's very complicated. It doesn't even follow generally accepted accounting principles. So if you're an accountant, you don't even understand it. It doesn't follow those rules. It doesn't have the same calendar year. Township budgets go from January to the end of the year. School budgets go from July to June. So figuring that out on your tax bill is impossible to figure out. So sit down with people and have these conversations. So I think that open and honest dialogue is the first thing. Admit that sometimes somebody has a good idea and we'll try to see how we can make that happen. You have no idea how cutting red tape for people and making something happen that might seem really simple and easy to do, but it changes their opinion about the school board. You want them on the same page. You don't want to be fighting the people who elected you. They elected you for a purpose, to listen to them and represent them in places where they can't do it themselves. And you need to hold your school administration accountable. So don't just yes everything that they're telling you. Study it. If you don't understand it, put the time in. If you ran for a school board, I know you don't get paid. It's a lot of hours. It's often you're hearing people complaining, but you did offer to do it. Then do the job. Learn what you need to do. Ask probing questions. Make sure that before you sign your name to anything, and you do it as a group, so you're never really signing by yourself, you're signing as a group of 9. that you absolutely understand exactly what you're signing for and you have all the information and you could explain it to anybody goes such a long way to have the public on the same page that you're on. So I don't know. I never found it difficult. I really didn't. There were things that came up during the 7 years that we were on the board. Yet in all of that time, our goal was to provide the best quality product for our kids. That's what counted the most. And I held people, and our board held people to a very high standard. Come in and think outside of the box. Give me ideas that maybe have worked in other areas. Maybe you want to experiment with something. We're fine with that. If it fails, I'm not going to shoot you. You tried something, it didn't work. Come back and tell me why you think that you're going to redo it and it might work better a second time around. Don't make people feel that interest in trying to move the ball forward and come up with interesting, innovative approaches that maybe other people haven't thought about. Be willing to accept that there might be some failures. You know, Edison didn't hit every experiment on the money. There's probably thousands of failures before he got some of these massive inventions. It's the same thing with. So I don't know. I really didn't find it that difficult. And we were able to get some tremendous achievements during that time. And the same thing with the township. Trust and verify. Have the hire the best people, be willing to pay fair compensation for the work, hold people to high standards, deadlines, allow them to fail and regroup and figure out how to come back with a better idea. And I think all of that really matters. I think the smartest person in the room recognizes that he's not the smartest person in the room. My job is to find the smartest people in the room and give them the tools to be successful.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm on board with that plan. That sounds very good. And one thing that you touched on is we elect our leaders to represent us and be there when we are not there to be making these decisions. So, kind of a big swing here, but as our representative, you will be representing New Jersey's 12th district and not only working for us here, but also relate us to the rest of the world. So maybe briefly touch on how do you see your role as a congressman as representing our district, but also our country, and the vision of how do we fit into the rest of the world?
Well, I think the first thing would be to recognize that we're a very big congressional district and it's made up of a lot of different people from different counties, different backgrounds, different demographics. So the first thing to do is to work hard to make sure that those people that didn't elect you or don't know you as well know that you're there for them. So that's item number one. Whoever ends up winning isn't going to be, there's going to be two or three counties that they're not from. So you got to work hard for those people who might not know you as well. My old partner used to tell me years ago that when we were on call, he worked harder many times for the patients that were his than he did for his own because his patients chose him. He had poor, he had a relationship, he knew them. He has a little bit of leeway with them. With somebody that's brand new or that you really didn't have that relationship, you work harder because they don't know you. They don't have that rapport. You got to build that. So I think the first step is to do that. I also think that you lead by example. We all look up to our leaders. And unfortunately, the last couple of years, we've had people in high office that have been embarrassments or really aren't promoting the highest qualities that I think a leadership should be promoting. So always act in a way that brings honor to yourself and to your profession. People call it politics. I almost think that sounds like a dirty word. I call it public service. Our former Congressman, Rush Holt, used to go into town halls all the time and say, don't call me congressman, call me representative. It's the House of Representatives. So it's just a mindset, but you're there to serve and act humble. There's a old Indian adage that says the tree with the most fruit is the one whose branches are bent the lowest. You got to live by that type of mentality. And I think you earn your respect by the manner in which you carry yourself and the level of service you provide, and keeping your word. Don't lie. I don't believe in lying. I wouldn't be smart enough to be able to keep track of all my lies, so I might as well just tell the truth. I put my head on the pillow at night and I sleep. I don't lie. You might not agree with me. I will make my case for why I feel the way you do, and we're entitled to do that. I don't agree with my wife on everything. We're not getting divorced. Disagreement is normal. We've made it a sparring sport here in this country. I don't think that's right. But treat everybody with respect. My mother used to say, treat people the way you want to be treated yourself, and live by that.
Wonderful. Well, I am going to ask this one last question, if that's okay. That somebody had a really great idea, and I've been trying to ask everybody is in this really wide range of candidates, we obviously know that you believe you're the best candidate. If you were to think who would be the second best, this I thought was like such a fascinating question. Like, what are the parameters? Who would be your second choice?
I mean, I'm not going to say who would be the second choice because there are some really good people that are out there, and I think everybody really wants to do this for the right reason. It takes me back to resume. Who has the ability and the background and the experience jumping into really the shark tank and is going to be able to fight and act on your behalf? I think it takes you back to resume, and I think voters should be doing their homework. We also always should be doing our homework. I mean, you got 17 people to pick from. Parse through the information that's out there on each of them. But if I were to give someone advice, pick the person who, based on experience, is most likely to be able to get the things done that you want to have done in Congress. Don't leave it to amateurs.
Excellent. Well, on that note, was there something that you really wanted to talk about and I forgot to ask? Or did we pretty much cover most of it?
No, I think we got most of the things that matter to the residents that are in our district. I think the things that I touched on are their most important issues, and I look forward to the race. I actually enjoy this, believe it or not. Some people call it purgatory, but I actually like this. It gives me an opportunity to get out and reach to people that I might not know me quite as well, and I enjoy that. May the best person win. I just think that's me.
Thank you.